Hi everyone, happy Women History Month. My name is Lisa Huang-North and I'm currently a product lead at Planet, a space technology company that's using space to help life on Earth. In celebration of Women History Month, I've had the amazing opportunity to speak with 8 product leaders over the past few months. And today, I'd love to share their stories with you in this 8-part interview series, which I'm calling The Paths to Product. Today, we'll get to hear the story of Tanvi Shah, who is currently a product manager at Zillow. Welcome and thank you, Tanvi, for taking the time to speak with me today. I really appreciate you. I've been fascinated just looking through your LinkedIn profile and seeing how, you've definitely traversed different paths, starting your career as a software eng at Infosys and moving on to dabbling in product marketing and business development. And then finally, here we are in product management. I'd love to hear more about your path into product.
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me here. It's a journey that I love to share. I've written about it too, but it's a journey that I hope inspires other people to make the move. So I basically have my bachelor's is in engineering, my master's is in electrical engineering. I had this grand vision to always be an engineer, and then. Once I was done with masters, I was in embedded systems. I worked in NetApp. I literally wrote C-level code for storage systems, like really, really low level code. 2 years in it, I was like, hey, I'm not cut out for this. I love the challenge of thinking about systems end to end. I love the challenge about helping people figure out issues that they have with design. Specifically, I used to look at my parents who were back in India and they had struggles with using products for communicating with me or for anything. And I was like, hey, why can't you use it this way? And it's just so easy. And then realize that it's not their fault. It is the fault of the product itself. And that's where I came to know about product management. And incidentally, I met my husband at that point of time, who is also a product manager. We started dating, and he told me about his path to product management. I was inspired. I was like, hey, I think product management is the place I want to be. I want to do something end to end. I want to see what happens before the engineer starts working on it, what happens afterwards. I want to help people like my parents and make this world a better place to actually use products. That's when I was like, okay, let's time to do something else and become a product manager. Incidentally, I got married at the same time. We decided to move to California because we would have better prospects. And it was a lot of change. And I quit my job with all of that, saying that, hey, I want to be a product manager. I know it's a future I want to be in. And I don't know how I'm going to get there, but I was like, yeah, I'll just do it somehow. I don't know how, I'll do it.
I love it. That leap of faith. You're like, let's just do it.
I don't know. I think I was just young and bold at that point of time. I mean, if I think about doing it now, I would be like, no way, man, I can't do this. But it was amazing. I mean, California was the right move for me. I was like, okay, what do I have to lose? I was like, I applied to all kinds of internships. Anybody who would give me a job in anything product related. If it had a word product in it, I was taking the job. So I did like 1 year of working at multiple startups. I think I worked at 5 different startups, absolutely zero or very little pay, and learned all product aspects. I have done business development, I've done product marketing for a startup, I've done sales. I did a technical sales internship for a company. I also did some product management for a very small startup, and that rounded out my experience of all the things I didn't know about product in my engineering field. And that was a great time because I got to see everything in the real life, like how things happen and how I experienced it. Got some great stories out of it. Did a lot of learning. I think there were no formal courses at that point of time. This is 8 years ago. So there were no great courses at that point of time. And the only books I remember reading was Inspired and I think Cracking the PM Interview. Or maybe Cracking the PM Interview was later. I don't remember now, but it's those are the only two books, and that is all I had to move.
They're like the origin books that till today is still the recommended read list, right?
Yes.
Whenever someone's like, how do I get into PM? You're like, read these two. Go for it.
It's pretty much that. Like I started there. And fortunately the web was a good place to like learn about people. And
Mm.
I literally have stalked a lot of LinkedIn profiles and be like, how did this person get to product management? What did they do before? Let's look at
Hey,
that.
I love
And
that.
that's pretty much how I took a lot of the roles. Then I landed my first internship, formal product internship at Verifone. It's a hardware devices company that helps you swipe cards. And
Mm.
that was my first product management internship. And then my first job was actually an associate product manager role at Simply
Mhm.
so I took a step down. I went from being an engineer, or at least like a mid-level software engineer, and I went down to an associate product manager. And
Mhm.
then I climbed back up. I worked at Simply Hired for a few months, and then I moved to this startup called Moxtra, which
Mhm.
was in the messaging and collaboration space. I did a lot of APIs and I did Android apps, like
Mm.
truly product management in a startup, which was super fun. Learned a lot, like iterated like crazy. Then realized that they were headed down a path which is more technical, more API based. And so decided after a year, I decided to move into eBay. So at eBay, I did 4 years. That has been like truly a place where I moved from being a junior level PM to like a senior PM, where I started with like very little and learned a lot. 4 years at eBay, I did a lot. I was at 2 years, I was in the space of transaction flows, buying actions, all of the add to cart flows, buy it now, auction, everything
Mm.
that starts off from the product page, ending in cart and checkout. I didn't do cart and checkout,
Wow.
but all the flows in between.
Wow.
And it was helpful. Like you're catering to a huge audience, international
Mm.
audience. You're working with, oh, what about translations in other countries? You're worried about things like how does it look like in app, how does it look like in website, how does it look like on a tablet. And we're catering to a huge audience at that point.
And I
So
think to your point, that scale factor. I think what's standing out to me is firstly, you start off being really scrappy and just kind of learning by doing, and through different startup where it gets, I think, gave you the opportunity to. Sounds like you picked up a lot very quickly in a short amount of time, and then eBay was where you really solidified your knowledge and thinking about it from a global scale as well as from hundred to thousands to probably millions of users, which is the eBay kind of community.
it's like I picked up design, I picked up testing, A/B testing, a little bit of it in Simply Hired. I went to Moxtra, I did things that were quicker as integrations and things like that. And all of that came back, and I got to take it and push it to a deep level and
Mm.
gave that depth at eBay, which is really helpful because then you start thinking more about other problems when you think about scale, which is a
Mhm.
very different product
Yeah.
mindset as compared to, hey, I want to just get this out the door.
I love that. I think that touches on the aspect which you don't, depending on people's work experience, you might not think about as much, which is B2B versus B2C, as well as, again, joining a startup versus a big established kind of multi country global tech company as well. Product will be very different flavor as well as a very different challenge depending on where you're landing in.
At eBay, I did 2 years in the product space of the product transaction flows. And then I was in the search experience for 2 years,
Mhm.
which was also a completely different learning about AI and how that works
Mm.
within the field of product, which was very interesting. And then now I'm at Zillow.
I was about to say congratulations. I know you just joined Zillow. I would love to hear kind of, especially since you're recruiting, I imagine during the pandemic and onboarding remotely during the pandemic. What has that been like?
Thank you. It's been a journey to get the role. Interviewing is hard. It's
Mm.
really hard. And especially as a mid career PM, to know what you want to do and
Mm.
to get that next level requires a lot of in depth analysis. I've been trying to move for a year, and there were a lot of offers that I rejected because I didn't want to be there. And it's a lot of learning about what you want to get in the next role.
Yeah.
Took a lot of time. But I think for me specifically, I am a mom who has a 3 year old, and it's really hard to find time when you're thinking about interviewing with so many different companies. I will say that interviewing in the pandemic has been amazing.
Yeah.
And it's weird when I say that, but thinking about like traveling to every interview with when you have like mouths to feed at home and things to do at home is really hard. The process was much easier since there was no expectation of you to be in person. For me, the rewards of being able to spend time with my son has been much greater as compared to what I could have done when I was on site and those kind of things. The reward of doing it online has been amazing.
That's a great perspective. From what I've been hearing from the community, there were a lot more conversations around how competitive it is and how it added extra challenge, especially with a lot of very experienced folks who are also on the market looking for jobs. But to your point, the fact that you can do things remotely and you can interview and you can almost have that in some manner of control over your environment where you are most comfortable at home in your natural habitat, and be able to have interview at that pace as well, and giving you access to interviews that otherwise you may have to fly to different cities or even to out of state, and that would have created a whole logistical layer that you don't have to do that right now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, you will hear the sentiment with people who have young kids, right? Like they have gotten time back. At the same time, it's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy to have that kid and be able to, but it's given me a lot more breathing room as compared to just the run. Like I managing just work and a kid is a two-time job.
Oh yeah.
If you add interviewing to it, it's a three-time job. And how do you get there? And it allowed me to scale. There are a few tips here where it has been helpful for me. I did get help so that my son was taken care of while I'm interviewing, while I'm studying. And that's the number one thing that I did, and my husband and I agreed on. Number two was getting a whiteboard. I literally have a whiteboard in our master bedroom, and I used to use that whiteboard during interviewing. And it worked out really well because I practice on the same whiteboard. I use the same whiteboard while I am interviewing. So I know exactly how big my handwriting should look like. Where should I place my laptop? And I did all of this much earlier. And it allowed me to have a good, seamless experience. For me, the feel of writing on something is very tactical and very nice to my soul of, okay, I understand what I'm saying.
Yeah. I think especially for visual learners, if you're going to explain your approach to a product design question, or talking about your product sense and prioritization framework, it's a lot easier if you can say, hey, look at this whiteboard, and you're drawing out tables and grids and going through that, versus saying, now imagine a 5-step process. Just use your imagination without the whiteboard. There will probably be a lot more challenging.
The investment of having that whiteboard has been immense right now for me. So
that's a great tip. Thank you for sharing.
Definitely, yes.
I'm really curious to hear, you mentioned that you had to do a lot of inner work in understanding what you want out of your next role. Can you share a little bit about how you made that decision eventually to say, all right, that's it, I'm joining Zillow, here we go?
This article talked about what are the different skill sets as a product manager you want to have. And you write those down as big circles, and then you say that, hey, these are the pieces I'm good at, and these are the pieces I'm not good at. And then what are the pieces that you're not good at? Do you want to actually focus on making those pieces better? Then your next job is pretty much aligned along those pieces. That's the kind of methodology that I used, where I started off with, hey, I have learned a lot about scale at eBay. What I now want to learn is how do you actually grow? eBay is at a point where they have captured a huge market. They want to keep capturing that market. I wanted to go back a little bit and go like, hey, if you have captured 10% of the market, I want to go to 30% of the market, and that is the role I wanted to go after. So that's where I started thinking, where will I get a learning opportunity? Where will I get this opportunity to grow my wings and be able to learn more? So that was one of the pieces that I wanted to think about. I also wanted to grow in my product management career. So I wanted a place which would say, hey, we see potential in you. We'll help you grow. At the same time, I'll help you move up the ladder quickly. I don't want to wait for 5 years to get to the next step. And so that's where I'm like, hey, which company is going to let me do that? And those were some of the questions I asked. I asked a lot of the hiring managers when I was talking to.
With your own career aspirations as well, right?
Yes.
Beyond just a topic or the skill you're trying to acquire, finding the right fit and having the companies that will support your growth as an individual is key too.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. And it involved asking a lot of questions. And it also involved like, hey, where do I want to play? Do I want to be in the front end space, which is more design?
Mm,
Do I want to be in AI? Do I want to be in this space? Like, it depends what you like, what you want to grow. And I had to really think about that a lot before I said, okay, yes, I can do this and maybe I
mm,
can pivot. But there's something to learn here from my perspective. So that's how I decided to go for Zillow. I definitely had a list of companies, and
sure.
I'm like, hey, these are some of the companies that I want to go after. And then this is the second list of second tier companies that I want to go after. I had a list of criteria for the companies. I literally drew a table and does it match the criteria? How much does it match my criteria? And
I love
okay,
it.
if it does,
Start with the success criteria and then work backwards.
that's
You
it.
totally
Like that's
PM'd
it.
your jobs. Just FYI. That sounds amazing. I love that.
Yeah, pretty much it. Yeah, I literally had a board. I have a picture somewhere, a board of, hey, these are the companies, these are the criteria. Which one does it tick? So let's go for it.
For sure. That's awesome. Are there any additional skills or maybe even surprises that as you were going through the interview process, you said, oh, I didn't think about that, but that actually sounds really great.
Yeah, I think for me, it was an interesting role. So at Zillow, I actually interviewed for a completely different role. In my mind, I'm like, I'm suited for this role. And then they're like, well, we have already had someone at this in this role. We have this other role. Are you interested?
Mm-hmm.
The role that I am in currently is a growth role. It's an email and push notification and communication kind of role where
Mm,
we are trying to stitch the different pieces of a real estate journey for a buyer, a seller, or a renter using email as a medium, which you normally already use. But how do we stitch all of the different pieces that Zillow has acquired over the years
mhm.
and make it a seamless journey? I had
Fascinating.
never imagined myself being in such a role. I'll
Mhm.
be honest.
Yeah.
It was something out of a left field for me where I'm like, oh, you're considering me for this role. They didn't even re-interview me for this role. They're like,
Yeah.
we think you will be a good fit for this. And I'm like, why do you think I'll be a good fit for this? But in my mind, I think it was a culmination of everything that I have done over the last few years. A
Mm,
little bit of everything has helped me get to where I am, because now I see journeys where I've seen startups have really small journeys, and eBay where they gave me a depth in the journey. So I am able to
mm,
flex my muscles in, hey, I know what the full journey is. How deep do we need to go in this journey is something that we need to think about. And then that allows you me to understand, okay, how much do we need to grow? How fast do we need to grow? Where is
mhm.
it that we pause? Where is it that we accelerate?
Yeah.
So those are some of the things that I have had to learn quickly on the job, where eBay was a lot more defined. Here at Zillow, it's been interesting because it allows me to flex completely different muscles.
Mhm.
One, I have definitely the whole expansion piece and thinking about a whole user journey has been amazing. At the same time, it's a growing company where they want to do a lot more. So they're happy to hear thoughts and actually learn more from other people, which is interesting and
Yeah.
allows me to come up with new ideas, new processes, whichever I've learned and then implement it. So it's at heart, Zillow at some places is just like a startup. Like, hey, if we can try something new, that's good. So I like that. Those are some of the good pieces of a company that we should always aspire to be in.
It sounds like you're exactly where you're meant to be. So I'm really happy for you.
Thank you.
Congratulations again.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right. So just to wrap up with our final question, I'd love to hear what's the one piece of advice you would give to your 20 something year old self?
Oh man. I would I would give anything to go back to my 20-year-old self. I wouldn't change much. I think the only other piece that I would actually give advice to my 20-year-old self would be to have more conviction in my beliefs. I
Mhm.
really think I had a lot of conviction at that time when I decided I'm going to go to the US and
Yeah.
study. Like, I didn't have any friends when I came here, and I've been here for 11 years now. I'm like, what? So
Yeah.
in my mind, it's like, just be bold, be bold, be creative, be convinced in yourself and in your faith to do big things, because
Mhm.
they come to you if you just keep pursuing it.
Thank you so much again. I really appreciate your time. What's the best way for people to get in touch if they would like to, hear more?
I mean, LinkedIn is definitely a good place to start off with. It'd be great to know where they're coming from. I get a lot of LinkedIn requests. As a product manager, I'm always prioritizing my time. So give me a reason to prioritize my time for you, and I'm happy to do it.
I love that. That's a solid gold advice for it. Networking in general, especially nowadays where people do jump on LinkedIn all the time and sending requests whenever you're not including a message. It's hard for anyone to say yes because they don't know who you are, where you found me, and etc. etc. Thank you again.
Yes, no problem. Thank you. It was great chatting with you, Lisa. Happy to see what comes out of this.
Thank you.
Wonderful. I hope you enjoyed today's interview series, and be sure to check back to hear from the other 7 amazing product leaders. Thank you, and happy Women History Month.